Mike Smith, welcome back to another Maya tutorial. This time we're in Maya 2017 and I'll be showing you how to set up your render settings and render resolution for both a single image render and an image sequence that we can turn into an animation. To start with, we need to go to our render settings. Now to open that, go to Windows, Rendering Editors, Render Settings. Alternatively, you've got your render icon with the cog at the top of the screen. In your render settings, you need to choose who you want to render with, whether it's software, hardware, or the Arnold renderer. Now sometimes the Arnold renderer plugin will turn off. You need to turn it back on by going up to Windows, Settings Preferences, Plugin Manager, and then towards the bottom of your plugin manager you need to scroll right the way down. There's one called mtoa.bundle. That is your Arnold renderer plugin. Tick loaded, wait a few seconds and then close, and Arnold renderer will now be available. So if it's just a single frame or a single image you're looking to render, you just need to go to your Common tab, scroll right down to image size, select your resolution. So for example HD 1080, or if you wanted to print, you've got A4 and A3, which are much higher resolution than 1080 HD. For this tutorial though, I'm just choosing 1080 HD. And then we need to open up our render view. So at the top of the screen you've got your render icons. We want the one with the eye. And your render view, before we render, I just want to show you in options, test resolution. Make sure it's ticked next to render settings, otherwise it will choose a percentage of your render settings. So we want the full resolution that we've chosen. Then we can right click in our render view, go to render, render, and then we can choose whichever camera you've set up. Once it's rendered, it could take a few minutes, go up to File, next to Save Image, click on your options, and you might want to experiment and switch between save a raw image and save a color managed image. It will affect how it saves, so just try those out, and then apply and close, go back to File, Save Image, and then you can choose your destination and you can choose the file type, for example a JPEG, a TIFF, or if you want a transparent background, a PNG. Now to render an image sequence, it's similar, but there's a few more steps we need to take. First of all, make sure your project folder is set. So go to File, Set Project, and actually tell it where you want all of your frames to render. So click on your project folder just once, and then click on Set. And if it comes up with a dialog box, just choose the middle option that says Create Default Workspace. Once that's set, go back to your render settings, choose who you want to render with, and in the Common tab, we'll start at the top. In File Output, I'm going to choose JPEG. Make sure the quality is set to 100. I'll leave the gamma on the default 2.2. And then in Frame and Animation Extension, you want to choose anything that's not single frame, otherwise it will just render frame 1 and then stop. So I'll choose name.number. Scroll down a little further and you've got your frame range. So you can choose your start frame and your end frame, however long your animation may be. Press enter and you'll see at the top here it says file name. It's got your scene or your project name, and then 001, and in this case 096. Now you have got something here called frame padding. If I just adjust that, you'll see what happens. If I increase it to maybe 5 or 6, have a look at your file names. You've basically just got a bunch of zeros before your actual file name. So you can play around with that if you want, but I'd recommend you set it to either the same as or one higher than the number of digits in your end frame. For example, 96 is 2 digits, so your frame padding will be 2 or 3. If it was 110, that's 110, which is 3 digits, so set your frame padding to 3 or 4. Scroll a bit further down, you've got renderable cameras, so you can choose if it's one camera, just choose your first camera. If it's multiple cameras, you can add a renderable camera and you can render in multiple cameras at the same time. Choose your resolution. At that point, I'd recommend you take a screenshot or make some notes of the settings you've used, just in case anything goes wrong, or if it doesn't go wrong, you can refer back to it later on. Close this, and then if you go up to your menu set, switch into rendering, and then at the very top it says render. Go down to render sequence and click on the options, and then tick render all cameras. Make sure it says render sequence frame and then however many frames are in your sequence, and then you can click on render sequence. Leave it to it. It could take quite a long time. It really depends what you've got set up. And if you check in your project folder, you'll find there's an images folder that contains all of your frames. So for this scene, there's 96 frames. I'll have 96 JPEGs saved. At that point, you need to go back to your Autodesk application folder, and there's a program in there that would have downloaded for you called F-Check. If you open up F-Check, you just need to go to File, Open Sequence, choose the very first frame in your sequence. It could take a minute or two to open, and you'll get your animation open up. Just press space to either start or stop your animation, and at that point we can go to File, Save as Movie, choose your name and destination, and then when it comes up with an option to use transformations or no transformations, be sure to choose no transformation so it doesn't compress. That will give you a Quicktime Movie file that you can then open up and use in any application you like.